Welcome to the Pause Reset series. I'm excited because today we have Damian Bradfield, the CCO of WeTransfer, joining us to talk about how to run an ethical tech company, and is that even possible? My name is Raina Kumra. I am the CEO of Juggernaut, a consulting bureau, and I'm also the managing partner at the Fund LA, an early stage venture firm. And I'll introduce Damian, and then I'll hand it over to you, Ken. Damian Bradfield's WeTransfer's Chief Creative Officer and founding shareholder. He is also the chairman of the University of the Underground. He published his book, The Trust Manifesto, What You Need to Do to Create a Better Internet with Penguin in 2019. Damian's professional and cultural interests include art and the role of creativity within organizations, doubt as part of the creative and commercial process, and how ambiverts thrive in a collaborative professional world. He's an outspoken advocate for online trust, art patronage, and human values in business. Damian, thanks for joining us. Ken,
thanks for having me. I don't know who wrote that intro, but it sounded quite good.
It's a good one. Yeah, I might actually flip off of it because I'm like a tech ethics enthusiast is how I've been referring to myself. So.
Okay, that sounds better. Better summary, probably.
And I'm Ken Miller. I'm a curator, editor, and author, most recently of Pictures, which is coming out later this year. And as somebody who works in the arts and works as a curator, I am a intensive WeTransfer user.
Thank you. And you have something coming out later on this year. That's amazing, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah,
right. We need more stuff coming out this year, right?
Right at the end. So hopefully like a good omen as we go into 2021.
Yeah.
We need that too, Jesus.
We need any good omens at this point. So I wanted to have Damian as part of our series because I always point to WeTransfer as a model of a company that did things differently than, say, a standard operating procedure for tech companies in Silicon Valley, of which we know isn't always the best. It's not the best norms. It's not good for the users. It's not always great for the customers. And it's certainly not the employees' first choice. So I'm always interested to kind of find out how you did this. Like, how were you able to sort of drive a company, a culture forward? You approached advertising creative differently. You approached your relationship with your customers, like the whole social contract that you've set up is completely different. Why do you think that is?
I think it's really down to a whole number of things, but if you look at the path of WeTransfer from inception in 2009 through to where it is today, it hasn't followed the typical Silicon Valley path, right? So it wasn't founded in Silicon Valley, it was founded in Amsterdam. We didn't raise money until 2015, after which we were already profitable and had already managed to prove that we could run a profitable, healthy, good business, giving away 30% of the inventory that we had to support artists or illustrators or causes that we believed in. And without diving too much into some of the problems in setting up the business and how we evolved, I'm very grateful looking back at actually basing the company out of the Netherlands, where there is a really very natural work-life balance. It's not a buzzword. People don't talk about it as if it's some sort of aspirational thing that we should try and achieve. It's pretty much hard-coded and baked into life here. So the business started off as quite a healthy business. The way that we did business was quite healthy. It wasn't motivated by, huge growth or huge wealth or huge investment or huge returns. And I think the culture within the business was really guided by employees themselves, as opposed to, any particular founder trying to steer it. I think a lot of it was actually left down to the employees to work out how best to operate right now and what made sense and how we should behave and what we should do. And over time, that's obviously evolved, but it's still very much a very intrinsic part of what WeTransfer is today. Is a people-first business. We have this mantra, which is people first, creativity second, and technology third. And at first, a lot of people raise their eyebrows, saying, as a tech business, does that mean you don't care about engineering? And we said, no, absolutely. But if you don't employ great people and give them space to be creative and to think, you'll never be able to produce great technology. If you're a business that's really just focused on technology at all cost, you will become a very different type of business a lot. And that's, I think, a lot more of the direction that a typical Silicon Valley business has taken, which has taken us to a place that perhaps isn't the most positive with regards to the tech world.
Yeah, it's such a novel concept to put people first. I know
you know this well. I mean,
yeah.
We've come from the agency world, right, where actually the only commodity you have is people, and agencies are typically terrible at actually putting people first. It would always be the client, but ultimately, if you don't hire good people and look after them really well, you'll never get anything out of them. It's really second nature, right? But unfortunately, along the way, that a lot of companies forgot about it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask about the sort of outward-facing version of that. The sort of inwardly, that makes a lot of sense, and the sort of not embracing like founder culture or the sort of like the founder hero narrative. But also, one of the big issues that's happening with tech right now is a disconnect between who's making the products and who's using the products. And WeTransfer is obviously, like, you have a very user-directed product. Like it's exists to support creative exchange and creative expression. And I'm wondering how you maintain that connection with your users.
I mean, again, this comes back to a sort of principle that's been hard-coded into the business that let's take it somewhere else. If you look at WeTransfer and if you've used the web application, right, if this is the entire screen that we have to operate within, right, this is the context that we have to play with when we're building things on the web. The only thing that we use is this little piece here, and everything else belongs to somebody else. So it's either an amazingly beautiful wallpaper that's highlighting a project with FK Twigs or Moses Sumney or someone, or it's an advert for Vimeo or Shutterstock or someone else. But generally, it's not about us. So our role was always very much that we were an enabler. We saw ourselves in the passenger seat, not necessarily in the driving seat. We just developed what we saw as our tracks. But the most important thing were the trains that went on the tracks, but they didn't belong to us. Our role was basically to lay out these tracks for people to be able to convey, to send, to share. And what went on the tracks were, your work as a curator, the work that you're sharing with your colleagues or friends, the work that Raina is doing or was doing with the media or wherever else you were operating. So we saw ourselves, perhaps in a typically Anglo-Dutch perspective of being secondary. Not being arrogant and believing that it was all about us and we should dominate the whole screen and just have everything that was about WeTransfer. Our belief was that if the screen was a magazine, no one wants to read a magazine that is constantly talking about the same things or the same person or the same individual, the same business. You have to have variety, you have to have breadth, you have to have depth. And that still is, what excites us. It's the reason that we're still doing what we're doing.
I love that, and that's benefited the business completely. Like it's kind of a full circle, right? By serving others, they're also participating in helping WeTransfer become what it is.
It's a long game. So if you're, this is where it's complex again. If you've taken early seed money or angel seed money, Series A, Series B, and you're trying to get to this sort of trajectory, then the people that you took money from early on are looking for a return, maybe within 3 to 5 years. I mean, if you understand anything about building a company or building a brand, it's pretty much physically impossible to do it within that time frame. And we can talk about how you can create these unicorns. Those unicorns were not created in 3 years or 5 years. Mm-hmm. It takes 10 years to build a business. And if you're going to set out to do something within 10 years, then set out to do something good within that 10 years. And particularly today, the audience is more critical than they've ever been. The watch outs are bigger than they've ever been. You've got to be super careful about how you're operating, how you're behaving, and I think particularly in the way that politics has moved, and with societal issues that we're dealing with right now, and there's an awful lot of focus on brands to behave, to be beacons of decency, or of advocates for creativity, or for good business, whatever it might be. And more so than ever, I think people are looking to brands to give them some sort of guidance. Sadly, because we're lacking it in the political sphere.
Yeah, one of the things that you've done that's interesting is WePresent, which sort of expands on what you're talking about with using the screen, where it almost like turns the screen back on all the people using WeTransfer and presents their work. I'm curious, I mean, you talk about this moment for brands, but like, I'm curious about the risks and the rewards of doing something like that. You're representing a diversity of opinions. Like, did that make you nervous going into it? What have the challenges been?
Well, I like being nervous, so that I think that's a healthy state, right? That if you're not nervous about pushing something out there, or about showcasing something or creating something, then honestly, it's probably not that interesting. It's pretty much the brief that we give to every agency we work with. Is I won't tell you exactly what I asked them to do, but it's it's made me nervous. I really want to go, oh my god, this could be make or break. And I think that's a really healthy challenge, right? That if you're not thinking like that, then you're honestly not trying hard enough. And it's not that I'm trying to scare people, it's that we're trying to push it as far as we possibly can to change perception, to change opinion. There's certainly been moments where I thought, okay, maybe this isn't our job. Maybe we're overstepping our mark in terms of what our responsibility is to our users, or to society, in particular around gun reform. Post Parkland shootings, I had 2 kids in school in LA, and I'd never experienced anything like this. And coming from the Netherlands, coming from the UK, we don't have gun issues. There are no metal detectors at schools. There isn't any concern that my 11-year-old kid would have to have, or my 8-year-old daughter would have to have by going to school. It was never going to be a question of safety and security. And when the Parkland shootings happened, I just thought, this is unbelievable, that it's hard enough to get your kids to enjoy school anyway. But this idea of, you've got to be fearful for your life at school is just unnecessary, completely unnecessary. And this only really exists because of the fact that semi-automatic weapons are available in society. And I personally just believe that they should be illegal. So we did a lot of work. We dedicated all of our advertising space to pushing gun reform. And that made me really nervous. We didn't know what it was going to mean in terms of our audience. How conservative was our audience? How conservative was the investors? How would people respond to a company, a file sharing business, talking about gun reform? We worked with a lady, a Dutch lady in LA, has a company called Mike TV, and she said, "Look, I'm going to go and find a production crew, and I've got this concept around talking to veterans and using them as the voice, talking about how unnecessary it is to have semi-automatic weapons in society in America." So we helped back and produce this film, and we pushed it out on the platform, and it just blew up. It went to the March for Our Lives. It was shown in Washington. It's probably one of the biggest causes that we've got behind that I think the company really resonated and responded well to. But it was certainly a moment where I thought, okay, this could be outside of our comfort zone, or outside of what people expect from us. But thankfully it wasn't. And in fact, it's been a catalyst for us to get involved in homelessness in LA, or get involved with more LGBTQ matters or Black Lives Matter. And that's it's been great. It's I think one of the biggest reasons that people come and join WeTransfer today is because of that aspect. The wallpapers we present, the desire to try to change things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think bored you to death.
You know your audience. And you. No. I wanted to talk a little bit about one of those things that you. Is internet okay? Are we all still streaming? Okay. But you just mentioned briefly that, but the debt relief project you did with Headspace.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how that kind of came together? Because I thought that was such an incredible thing to do that wasn't just PR or CSR. It was like real, true impact on all of these people's lives that you did as a side project.
Well, so I have to thank a lady on the team called Annie Malarkey. So Annie actually read about an elderly couple in New York who'd found an organization called RIP Medical Debt, and their mission was basically to buy up medical debt to pay it off. And without going into too much detail, there's a horrendous path of bad debt being sold and resold until eventually it gets to just a penny on the dollar. So the value of that medical debt is just can be bought up for a single penny for every dollar of debt that you have. Now, an elderly couple in New York had read about RIP medical debt and had basically crowdfunded some cash and managed to pay off the medical debt for their local community. And I believe it was in Greenwich Village or somewhere like that. And Annie read about it on the New York Times and said, wouldn't it be amazing if you could do something similar in Los Angeles? What would it cost? Very simple exercise of just really working out, how much debt there was in LA, how much debt there was in LA County. It basically came down to a number somewhere in the region of $300,000 that we would need to raise to eradicate that year's medical debt in LA. And if we could get together that relatively nominal amount of money, it would alleviate the debt for about 12,000 people, I think. We just started calling up people and just said, listen, do you know about this? Did you know that it's possible? Did you know that there was so much debt? Did you know that it's, most importantly, the number one driver for homelessness? That, sadly, even somebody in their 60s who might have had full medical insurance for their entire life, that is diagnosed with cancer and has to go through chemo, would have to pay in the region of $64,000 out-of-pocket costs themselves, which a lot of people in their 60s don't simply have, so they have to remortgage, sell the house. And unfortunately, this can spiral depending on how much treatment you might have or how sick you might be, into suddenly finding yourself in your 60s having paid medical insurance all your life on the streets and homeless. And so we just started ringing up people and saying, listen, do you know about this? What do you think? Would you help us? Would you help get the money together? And thankfully, the guys at Headspace were, in one phone call on board and basically matched the entire amount. We did a small dinner at the Hammer Museum and got together the balance. And within the space of a few weeks, we were able to pay off everybody in LA's medical debt. So I think 12,000 people received a letter saying that their medical debt had been alleviated. Now, sadly, that's just 1 year's medical debt, and the following year will probably be the same. It doesn't solve the issue. And I mean, the issue is that simply medical costs in the US are disproportionately high and need to change. But it is really rewarding to be able to work at a company and have a team like the team that we have at WeTransfer, but also to be able to partner with people like Headspace. Because there are a lot of people that said no, unfortunately, on the way. A lot of companies, people we knew closely, had a very different opinion as to how these people had come to get so much medical debt and didn't want to help. And it was really beautiful. The Headspace were amazing. And it was really just one phone call to Rich Pearson who said, yeah, sure, easy. Thanks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really nice.
What did you get it down to? It was like 5 or 10 cents on the dollar for the debt or something around that?
I can't remember exactly the number, but it's somewhere between $3 and $5, I think.
Oh gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, so when I
on the dollar.
Yeah, when I heard about that, I suffer from social impact exhaustion. Like I just can't take any more. I can't take any more of the fluff or the PR stories. But when I read that, I was like so relieved, and also just I felt like this is a path forward that isn't talking, it's just doing. So I was really grateful for that because it made me believe again.
Well, I mean, it's really easy to do. I mean, you can do it. The data that they have is very local. So you could, we were able to even look at Santa Monica, or you could do it just for a pocket of New Jersey or something like that. And sadly, I mean, we shouldn't have to do it, right? It shouldn't be something that you should have to do. But I think what was very evident in LA was the imbalance, the amount of unbelievable wealth, and then the ridiculous number of homeless people.
It's ridiculous, LA. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a token gesture on our part as to what could be done. We would love to try and follow it up and see where else we could take it, or how else you could push it through the rest of the US.
Yeah, count me in for next time.
Okay.
Well, this is slightly different, but connected in a way. I mean, one of the basic things about your approach as a business is WeTransfer is an incredibly valuable tool that you choose to give away for free. Like, you have the option of subscribing, but as somebody who spends their life constantly being poked to subscribe to things, or forced into annual renewals,
right.
I'm kind of curious why you chose to give away this product for free.
Well, because initially it was built for ourselves, so you wouldn't charge yourself for something that you wanted to use and build for yourself. And that, I mean, so much of that insight really is the foundations of WeTransfer. The reason there was no sign up, the reason it was free, the reason it looked beautiful, the reason that there was nothing happening apart from that little upload box was really because it was ultimately built for our own needs. So being simplistic individuals, the goal was to really keep it as simple as you possibly could. I mean, all jokes aside, there is advertising in the background on WeTransfer. So even though you are a free user, we do generate income from you as a free user. What I'm quite proud of is that we managed to generate income from you as a free user without the majority of our users even knowing that there's advertising there. Where every single ad that's pretty much built on WeTransfer is made by our team internally. Tons of stuff is rejected. We try and have exactly the same sort of concept and strategy as you would do for outdoor posters. So, minimum amount of text, try to get to as punchy a headline as you possibly can, make it visually appealing, less is more, all those sort of guidelines. So our goal really is to make the advertising almost invisible. And you could then argue, well, if no one knows there's advertising, how do you generate any income? People still click. People still will click through and perhaps not even realize that they are suddenly within a MailChimp experience, and they're reading something about Courier magazine on MailChimp. Funnily enough, they don't attribute that to us as us being the cause for them ending up in the MailChimp experience, which
that's good.
I think it's all good. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, it never feels like advertising. I mean, it is, but it doesn't even feel like a billboard. It just feels like art.
Okay, job done.
Yeah, totally. You're done. How did you come across that model? Like, I mean, it was all through experimentation, or?
No, all credit to Nalden. You know Nalden, right?
Yeah,
so,
Nalden. Yeah.
As one of the founders. Yeah, there was a period back in to the early 2000s, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, where blogging was huge, and Nalden was one of the founders. Was one of those sort of super bloggers for the Netherlands, probably the most famous blogger here. If you have Mashable in the US, he was probably the equivalent here. He worked on what his blog was called then, Nalden.net, with the concept of having these massive background images and then small overlays of text on top. And there were multiple overlays, but there were always one massive image. Although he didn't have a click, his goal with the blog was to get people to download that wallpaper. And we thought it was just genius that. In my mind, at least, if you had a brand like Nike who was willing to pay to be on the background of Nalden's blog, and a customer would come along and download that wallpaper and save it to their desktop and then upload it to their own desktop to customize their own home experience. I mean, that's like, I don't know how old you guys are, but that's like going to Athena or, a poster shop in the 80s and 90s and putting that poster up on the wall in your bedroom that, was from Betty Blue or Top Gun or something or other. But on your screen, in terms of brand awareness and kudos, it was about as good as you could possibly get.
That's right. I forgot it. So I don't think a lot of people know the origin story of WeTransfer, but I lived in Amsterdam for a while, and I met Nalden sort of, I think, in the first year of starting WeTransfer. I think he was still mainly focused on the blog. So it's interesting to think that it came out of content sponsorship, basically, right? It was to support his content, and then at what point did you transition to file transfer?
Well, so multiple things happen at the same time. So in different areas of Amsterdam, you've got Nalden.net, he's got a blog, and I can't remember how many readers he had, but for the Netherlands it was huge. Then Bas was another founder, and he had this idea of building up a sort of file sharing business, but didn't know how it should be built and how it should look. And basically those two guys came together and said, okay, look, if we did this and simplified it, we should take those backgrounds and put these two things together, and that became WeTransfer. Later on, Nalden and I had a studio together called Present Plus, and within that, we tried to build out different tools that also used wallpapers and tried to take that sort of background media onwards into different channels. Unfortunately, or fortunately, after a number of years of experimenting, nothing was working as well as WeTransfer.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning of WeTransfer, there were no clicks on the wallpapers, so it really was just a static image that rotated every 40 seconds. So you would just see an image, and all you could do was basically attribute eyeballs to this image. Only later we initiated clicks within it. But yeah, it was a combination of those two things. But very much, Nalden should take a lot of credit for how the look and feel of the site is, the simplicity of the site, the way that it's intuitive and frictionless as it is.
Yeah, no, it was very design led from the beginning.
Yeah.
But as are most things from Amsterdam, so unlike the US. So you guys recently became a B Corp. Why did you decide to do that? I mean, you've done everything under a C Corp that you wanted to do. Why was it advantageous to move to B Corp?
It's not really anything other than a sort of goal, a stick, a ruler, however you want to refer to it, for ourselves. So for those people that don't know, the structure of B Corporation, it's like an organic certificate for business. So by being B certified, you basically commit to behaving in a certain way, committing to certain goals with regards to recycling, sustainability, diversity and employment, a number of things that basically just amount to being a good company, being good business. We did it because, in a lot of things that we were talking about with regards to the internet, people hear you, but they don't really listen. And, in the online experience, everybody is in a rush, right? So that from the minute you turn on your screen, you're basically in a rush to get through your email, to get through your calendar, to get through this Zoom meeting that you've been forced to have to sit in on, whatever it is, but we're rushing. So when you try to explain to people that, a file sharing business is a business that, is trying to do good, that gives away 30% of its inventory, that also has products like We Present and Paste and Collect and Paper, by the time you've got through 10 seconds of that explanation, people have stopped listening. And in the same way that I think probably in the organic food movement, when early on Ben and Jerry's would have been trying to explain, what they were trying to do with their ice cream, how they were sourcing it, how they were going through, I'm sure that people would have just switched off. And then the sort of organic, vegan, all the labels basically came in, the certification, and it's a shortcut. People go, oh, right, okay, that's good, I get it. That's a good business. That's a healthy product. That's, that's something we should look out for. And so, long story short, part of it is really just that simple organic label that you can now apply to a company, and people go, oh, okay, I'm with them. That's easy. And the other part is really for ourselves to be able to say, okay, this is who we are today. B corporations have to be reassessed every 3 years, and in that reassessment process, the bar gets higher, right? So, if we aspired to today to be, 50% diverse in terms of our employment base, in 3 years' time, we have to have overachieved on that. We will have to raise the bar and make sure that we're doing something better. It's just good for the company to have some sort of structure, and perhaps also to be in the public eye, to force ourselves to have to behave a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always say that structure trumps culture anytime. So you can have as much great cultural things inside of your office and your organization, but they don't mean diddly if you don't have the structures in place to support that.
Right.
So, yeah, that's interesting.
I was going to say nobody let the art world know that, because it's a terrifying discovery.
Are there no B Corps in the art world?
That's a good question. I'm sure there are.
There must be, but there's not a ton. Obviously there's a lot of not-for-profits and there's a lot of very for-profits. But the zone in between, not possibly New Ink, which is from the New Museum.
Right. Yeah, I don't know either. I'm sure there are some museums that, are much more aware, much more conscious. Perhaps they haven't gone through the process yet, but I'm sure if they were to, they'd probably look quite good. I would imagine some of the newer institutions, but yeah, increasingly, more and more people are joining. I'm sure that over the course of the next couple of years, we'll see a ton more businesses, join the B Corporation. It was a really beautiful story when I wrote a book last year, and part of that process was just interviewing a ton of people, and one of them was Jostein Solheim, who was the then CEO of Ben & Jerry's. And in the story of Ben & Jerry's, they were acquired by Unilever a long time ago, basically in a sort of very competitive marketplace when Nestle were buying up Haagen-Dazs. And Unilever felt that they had to have an ice cream company, so they quite quickly signed a deal with Ben & Jerry's, perhaps not understanding fully what they had purchased. And Ben & Jerry's, being these two hippies from Vermont, were pretty adamant as to how their company was going to be structured, how the board was going to be structured, how the board would not report into the company, and the board would be, or there would be a secondary board that would be responsible for cause and brand. And that board was made up of the then CEO of Amnesty, I think, and some pretty heavyweight activists. And I think, from what I understand, Unilever spent quite some time trying to get out of a lot of the agreements that Ben & Jerry's had made, tried to, get out of using non-GM products to produce the ice cream. But, in a beautiful turn of events, now are very much based and focused on making sure their products are, GM free and organic, and that they recently tried to get, B certification approved as an organization the size of Unilever. It hasn't yet worked, but it's certainly something that they're aiming for. And Jostein is a massive advocate for this within Unilever North America. So I think it's super cool, right, that you could have, historically just two hippies from Vermont really shifting and changing business culture in an organization the size of Unilever. I think it's super cool.
I love that. I'm having a really hard time understanding how Axe body spray will ever fall under a B Corp, but let's try. Definitely.
Yeah.
But what's the process?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I did a lot of work with Unilever, so I'm very, unfortunately, I have post-traumatic stress disorder every time I smell Axe. So
we have you to thank for that, do we?
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry for many things. That's why I'm turning it around. I'm doing more ethical work now.
Right.
It's my penance. But what was the B Corp process like? I hear it's really arduous. Is it like 2 years of, no?
I mean, so it depends what sort of state you're in as a company, right? So for us, it wasn't too arduous, and there wasn't a huge amount of hoops that we had to jump through in order to get it. It's a process, but there are plenty of corporations out there that really help you through the process. So it's a series of checkboxes. Do you, what sort of engine are you using? How is your, how is the supply chain? Which companies do you assess in terms of, suppliers? And if you've been thinking about good business for a while, then it's not too complex. If you're a tobacco business, it's going to be a complex process.
That's
It's
fair.
going to take a while.
Yeah, it may never happen.
May never happen. Yeah.
So I wanted to switch over, unless Ken, you had something to say.
Yeah, I have one sort of quick question, which is you mentioned right at the outset that you're based in Amsterdam, so you're sort of at a remove from most U.S. tech culture. I'm almost like hearing you describe your working process, and you're thinking, I'm almost like, do you even think of WeTransfer as a tech company, or as a creative services company, or like a community network company, or a social good company? I'm curious how you even think of it internally.
So we're based in Amsterdam, but I was in LA for 3 years, so we definitely made a very conscious decision to try to make sure that we were relevant to the US market and doing what we could to try to make ourselves more present there. I think the way that people perceive WeTransfer internally would be very different depending on who you're talking to and which department you're talking to. Historically, we saw ourselves as a design business, so we didn't see ourselves as a tech business. And to be quite frank, early on, the entire site was built on Flash. It's hardly the most stable and robust infrastructure you could have. No, I mean that was the charm of it, right? Back then, that's what made it so easy to make it look so simple and sexy back then.
Yeah.
Today, it's a very different story, right? Today, we have a huge engineering team, huge in our eyes, not huge in Silicon Valley's eyes, and it's a beast. It's a very complicated machine. We're pushing billions of files every single year into 192 countries, 70 million users. We have multiple products, and they all need to be managed and curated and checked in the same way that we would have done originally with WeTransfer, and it's complicated, but I think if you were to ask most people, they would say that WeTransfer is quite a purpose-driven, design-led tech business, something like that. But increasingly, we're the technology is becoming front and center of everything that we're doing. I thought your headline there, Raina, was pause, as if there was a pause.
That's definitely yeah. I know pauses are. I'm cool with pauses. And then, what is the Empty Day initiative?
Oh, okay.
You did it last year, right?
Yeah, last year was the first year. Okay. So the concept was, could you imagine? It depends on how you feel about social media. I'm not a huge fan of social media, so my premise was, could you imagine that in the same way that you might walk out into a busy street in New York or a busy street in London on Christmas morning and it's just empty, and you have that feeling of space, that you're up before everybody else and nothing else is happening around you, and there's just calm. It's sort of so disorientating when you're in a big noisy city that it's just empty. That could you imagine a day where there was nothing happening on social media, where it was just empty? You'd open your newsfeed, you'd open Facebook, you'd open Twitter, and there would just be nothing in there because we'd all agreed to just leave it alone for a day. I thought it'd be just an amazing concept that, for multiple reasons, but primarily for mental health, to try to create some sort of digital Sabbath. I think they're increasingly over time, have we become much more consumption orientated. The idea of a day off, a Sabbath, is ridiculous. So we're working and living and buying and shopping 7 days a week. The same with the internet, although that really is 24/7. And I think more so today than ever, and it was bad last year, but I think this year is worse than ever. We need a day off. Like it's really important that you give your brain a rest. And if I speak from a personal perspective, I left Instagram because of FOMO. I just couldn't handle, even though I have a pretty good life and I was traveling and meeting interesting people and going to lots of different places and stuff, constantly having FOMO and looking at other people's lives on Instagram. And I think that we need to have a pause. So Empty Day was really just intended as a sort of initiative to have one day post World Mental Health Day. So this Saturday, 10th of October, is World Mental Health Day. The 11th is Empty Day. And this year it's bigger than ever. So I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people we have signed up, but it's been really exciting this year. We've got a massive campaign that's all across the States pushing Empty Day. And all it asks for you to do is just do nothing. Leave social media alone. I'm not asking you to quit it. I'm not saying that, Twitter is terrible, but just put it down for a day and do something else. Meet with some friends. Go to the park on your own. Go for a walk in the woods. But experience what it's like to not have to engage in social media. And there's a business part to this too, which is, as companies, right, we're spending 86 cents on the dollar on Google, Facebook, and Amazon. I think we need to reset and reimagine too how we're going to engage with audiences and talk to people outside of the big three, the big four, however you want to refer to them. And at this moment, we are just, hamsters in a wheel, saying, "Yeah, oh my God, I hate Facebook. It's terrible. I can't do anything about Facebook." And then, what do? Well, I'm a marketer, and my life expectancy is 2 years. I need some fast returns, so I better buy Facebook. It's a vicious circle that needs to be somehow stopped. And that at this moment, there are not many companies that are really thinking about it properly, I think. So.
No, I agree. I think, from the early stage investor perspective, I see a lot of companies doing direct to consumer that rely, Ken knows about this too, all these small sort of lifestyle businesses, say 60-70% of every bit of dollar of funding they get just goes directly to Mark Zuckerberg in one way or another. And I can't support it. I can't support businesses that are built on continually enriching Mark Zuckerberg.
But this is the challenge, right? So the book that I wrote is all about this. That in all the research that I was doing, and everybody that I was interviewing, in conversations that we were having with, I interviewed 60, 70 Uber drivers, Deliveroo drivers, Postmates, delivery bike guys, girls, you name it, and everybody was basically saying, "Yeah, I hate it. I'm forced to do this. I have to use these tools. Blah 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 blah." But I'm not in control. And I just thought it was a crazy concept that if you as the user is not in control of what you do on social media and how you use your phone, and in companies we're not able to do anything either, and the regulators aren't able to do anything either, then we're basically all saying, "It's okay, Mark, Jeff, you go ahead, just take our money. I'm a hopeless victim, and there's nothing that I can do about the future." And the only way that I think we're actually going to change it, because to date legislation really hasn't helped us, and companies are not really doing that much, is to go right down the chain and look at individuals and say, okay, if you agree that it's not great for your mental health, for your kids, for us as humans to be attached and connected to social media, particularly given the rise of fake news and what we're seeing happening with politics and global politics, then do something about it. And you've all signed terms and conditions, so we're not going to get into actually changing policy within these companies by denying signing the terms and conditions. But if you just stopped using it for a few days, if we all stopped using it for a few days, they'd listen. Someone would wake up and go, "Shit, what happened? New York's just left Facebook. What's happened here?" It would have a huge financial impact. It'll only happen if we, I think, collectively agree that there should be a day or two where we do it. Not March, just leave social media.
Yeah, we actually have.
That's it. I'll end my sermon
about that.
Yes, today is this Sunday.
It's tell us where and it is and how to access information about it.
So, there is a very limited amount of information on emptyday.today. It's this Sunday. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to rally. I really don't want anybody to, to credit anybody for us. I see it as it's like Pink Ribbon Day. take it. If you want to organize something huge in the area that you live in or with your friends, something, own it. You can take full credit for it if you like. I think the most important thing is that you just do nothing, and tell your friends to do nothing too. That's the only action that you really have to do. emptyday.today is exactly the URL, and there are some images that you can share in the run-up to the day. Friends of ours from Secret Leaders, FK Twigs, Stephen Fry, people like that have all agreed and have been helping the last couple of years in promoting it. But ultimately, the funny thing is, which is a bit of a bit complex for us to comprehend, is I don't really want you to go on social media and start pushing it massively. Just leave it. Just do nothing.
I know.
I know we want to be activists and share like something and get a banner and march.
I hear billboard ads are coming back into style. You could do billboard ads.
Yeah, well, to be honest, Noble People, our media company, helped us get a whole load of billboard ads all across the States. Fortunately for us, they're not in great demand at the moment, so we were able to get some amazing media deals.
That's awesome. So I will move us to one or two questions. We have one from Andreas. Gorgeous. So as brands hold so much societal sway in the US, do you anticipate more B Corps over here or more companies really putting in the work like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's? And I'll add to that question is, do you feel like there's a consumer movement underway that might bring these two things together?
100%. 100%. So there will 100% be more B Corps in the very near future. But whether you have that B Corporation label or not, I don't think you really have to do it. It's as I said, it's a sort of a badge of honor. But ultimately, the best thing to do is really just become a good business. Behave well. Consider who your suppliers are. Consider what you're doing. Consider, what you're doing with people's data and privacy, and how you're using energy, how you're, you're employing people, what your employment practice is, all that sort of thing. Just do that. And if you do that well, and you talk about it, and your employees talk about it, then your customers will find out about it too. I think Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's are the sort of the easy ones, but it's easy because they begun as good businesses, period. They didn't at a certain point decide that they were going to do something great. They started out being just really, really good businesses from day one. For those people that want to try and shift, let's pick on the tobacco industry. It's going to be near impossible. But I think if you aren't trying to behave and act and think like a good business and really put your customers first, I think you're going to get called out. It's going to be, it's going to get messy if you're not really being considerate.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder how, consumer movements take forever, and they're so hard to organize. But I'm seeing a shift. I'm seeing people kind of very tired of basically being chased for their data and getting nothing from it. And actually, a lot of startups that I'm seeing are trying to renegotiate that social contract. And my startup many years ago was trying to do that too. So for every user that downloaded an app, they would receive something instantly of value, which our market was India. So we gave them megabytes, mobile data credits in exchange for their time. And then I'm seeing a lot of new startups that are like, well, we need to monetize our being, basically our entire existence, because traditional jobs have gone away. And I think there is going to be a different way of monetizing our data that is owned by the people. And hopefully at some point we'll get to take our data off of Facebook to anywhere else that we want to take it. That's literally the last bit of power that we need.
And people are, I think an interesting story is in the search engine in the search engine space, that everybody knows of Chrome and Firefox and Internet Explorer. But in Germany, there's a web browser called Ecosia, And up until a couple of years ago, I'd never heard of it. Yet it had. Perfect. Thank you. So the reason you haven't heard of it is because you're not a 20-year-old activist. I think Ecosia has something like 50 million users that you wouldn't believe are using Ecosia to search the web. And why do they use it? Because on average, every 45 searches that you make within the Ecosia browser, they'll plant a tree. The last time I looked, they'd planted something like 78 million trees. It's a foundation started in Germany 10 years ago. Really, it's just driven by young activists. But increasingly, if I ask people, why would you not consider using something like Ecosia? They're like, well, because search is so much better on Chrome. Like, yeah, it is. But if you can get over the fact that maybe people are not buying the top searches as they do on Chrome, and you're not perhaps being steered as much as you might be by using Chrome, I see no logic whatsoever why you wouldn't use Ecosia when you can, just by sitting on your ass at home, browsing for the crap that you don't need, plant trees. And it's just a complete no-brainer to me. So I think we're going to see a shift towards more of those types of businesses that are just using some very basic tools, giving a percentage. All they basically do is take a percentage of the advertising revenue that they get from the normal web browsing experience and give it to a program that they've now set up to plant millions of trees around the world. It's fantastic business.
I love it. I can't believe I've never heard of it. I would love it now.
My gift to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
It does not come up first in Chrome. That's the main issue.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I wonder where it does come up in Chrome.
Probably pretty well.
It was like third. It was third down on Chrome.
Oh, yeah?
Right.
Well, at least it's there. That's good. Let's stay optimistic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, this is like an opportunity question, but, we've been sort of talking about this. So much of the current model involves taking people's data and taking people's creative efforts and sort of subjugating it to the platform. So you're either going to be spending your ad dollars with Instagram or Facebook, or your search dollars with Google. And it feels like part of your model is very much sort of, and this goes to WePresent also, pushing forward, working in support of your audience and working in support of your users. And I'm curious if, as we talk about people, like a rethinking of the relationship with consumers, if you see an opportunity there, or if that's central to your philosophy.
To put our users first.
Yeah, and to work in support of them rather than using them as sort of a tool for the growth of WeTransfer. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, who would, who would just want to use people? Oh, there are a couple of companies that do. That's true. No, I mean, again, this goes back to the way we just perceived, and it's quite, perhaps it's naive, perhaps it's a little bit self-deprecating, but we didn't see ourselves as great artists. We didn't see ourselves as great filmmakers. We didn't think we were fantastic technologists or designers or anything else. Quite good, but not the best. So we would try and showcase the best, right? And I get goosebumps still today where there are people that 10 years ago we tried to get on the platform that we're now getting on there. There are people that we're now showcasing that are coming to us. I'm like, oh my God, can you believe that? We never dreamed that we would be able to have those sort of people on WePresent or on WeTransfer. So our entire existence was around, going to people and saying, listen, I don't want any money. I don't want to, be paid for any of this, but I want to give you media to showcase what you're doing. And we had tons of people that would say, what's the angle? I don't get this. You're like, no, there's zero angle. The angle is we showcase great talent, amazing work, and our users love it. And if they're happy, we're happy, because they'll, ultimately they'll come back. Mm-hmm. And that very simple premise is the reason that we have ridiculous organic growth. For years we didn't spend a dime on marketing. The business just grew really through goodwill. And we had an NPS score of something like 82% because our users just loved what we did. And in France, we have almost cult-like status that they think that because we've never advertised there and we don't really ask much of them, we don't spam them, that we are some sort of cult underdog that is just there to enable them to get their work done and sort of leave them alone. It's really just by taking that back seat or that passenger seat, as I said earlier on, that we've got to where we are.
That's genius marketing positioning, like, for sure. Like the cult underdog who's just in the background.
I wish I could say that it was genius marketing. It's we feel very fortunate, right? And I think today, unfortunately, I think you couldn't do it again today. So the benefit that we had was that we were just in the right place at the right time too, because you could grow a community organically without spending a dime. Right? You could reach people through Facebook and Instagram and everything without having to spend any money, and it's impossible today to reach the number of people that we reach, organically. Back in 2011 and 12, we'd have to have millions, tens of millions in marketing to achieve the same sort of reach. So I don't know if it's possible to do it today with the construction that exists in the current web.
No. 95 to 98% of businesses cannot do anything without the current dominators of the internet ad space. But yeah, I missed that window where there was just organic growth. So what year was that it launched? It's sort of the growth.
December 2009. It blew up in 2010.
Yeah.
It was really lucky.
So that's your 10-year anniversary, not of founding, but of fame.
Yeah, we had a was it last year? I think it was last year. My mind's going now. We had a big party last year to celebrate 10 years, at least anyway. This whole COVID thing, everything blends into
I know.
the same sort of month a week. I don't know where we are anymore. Do you? What month is it?
I think it's October.
In my mind.
I'm pretty sure it's October. Yeah.
You definitely have the best Zoom COVID backdrop that I've seen so far. You've adopted the WeTransfer amazing backdrop model, but in light.
It's wallpaper. It's Kelly Wessler wallpaper. I long to be back in LA secretly. That's
really
despite the politics.
To be in Amsterdam. So.
Just the weather. I want Raina's daylight.
Oh yeah. We it's actually a fluorescent light, but anyways. Okay. But I think we are just about at the end of this wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining us, Damian. Thanks for making the time. Thanks for teaching us your ways and giving us some hot tips like Ecosia. And talk soon. And definitely we'll participate in Empty Day and not talk about it.
Exactly. That's what you have to do. It's going to be hard. Well, you can talk about it up till Sunday, but then on Sunday you have to go silent. That's it.
Well, or you can talk about it in person, like humans.
True.
Oh, well, I don't know.
At 1.5 meter distance.
Exactly, with masks on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see everybody next time. Thanks to everyone who is in the audience, and there's a lot of great comments. Appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon. Damian and Ken, just hang on 1 second, and I'll see you in the green room.